a sexist take on an iconic female superhero, Charlton Heston in blackface, and a sequel to one of the greatest films ever made. All of these poorly conceived films nearly got made, and they're not alone. Few movie stars have been given as many undeserved second chances as Mel Gibson. One of Gibson's many comeback attempts that never came to be was a movie about the 2nd century Jewish rebels, the Maccabees. You don't have to delve too deep into Gibson's problematic behavior to know that this would have been an absolute disaster had it been greenlit. Screenwriter Joe Eszterhas was working on the script, which ultimately got shelved by Warner Brothers in 2012 due to criticism from Jewish groups. In a letter addressed to Gibson and published by The Wrap, Eszterhas described many instances of Gibson being anti-Semitic and traumatizing Eszterhas's wife and son.
No human being should treat another the way that he treated us.
The script for the film may have been written with the purest of intentions, but according to the screenwriter, Gibson's interest in it stemmed from deflecting press scrutiny over his anti-Semitism and an illogical attempt to try to get Jews to convert to Christianity. Joss Whedon was geek royalty in the 2000s and early 2010s, with the girl power of Buffy the Vampire Slayer earning him a reputation as a progressive pop culture feminist. Warner Brothers, meanwhile, was continually struggling to get a Wonder Woman movie off the ground, despite the character's immense popularity. In 2007, the news broke that executives had rejected Whedon's Wonder Woman script. Initially, it sounded like a classic case of an artist getting screwed over by the suits. Then in 2017, around the same time as the release of Patty Jenkins' successful Wonder Woman movie, Whedon's Wonder Woman script leaked online, and everyone realized it was terrible. Focused more on Steve Trevor than Wonder Woman and filled with cringy, casually sexist dialogue, the script was a clear illustration of the flaws in Whedon's general writing style that his fans might not have noticed before. Whedon's handling of the character just proved that he wasn't the best choice to do a Wonder Woman movie. George Dunning's 1968 animated movie Yellow Submarine has the flimsiest of stories, but the combination of psychedelic animation coupled with music by the Beatles makes for a delightful viewing experience.
I liked the way they varied the animation style.
It's also a movie so of its time and place that it seems completely pointless to remake it. For some inexplicable reason, however, Disney and Robert Zemeckis' studio, Image Movers Digital, attempted to do just that. The concept art for the unrealized remake shows that everything in the original that was cute and silly was transformed into pure nightmare fuel. Disney ended up rejecting the Yellow Submarine remake about a year and a half before its intended summer 2012 release date. Zemeckis was free to shop the remake to other companies, but ultimately the director gave up. Long before an adaptation of Neil Gaiman's Sandman comics became a hit series on Netflix, multiple filmmakers tried their hand at bringing the endless to the big screen. Some of these attempts, like the version written by Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio, could have been something great. One such adaptation, however, proved so horrible that Gaiman himself had to go to great lengths to prevent it from getting made. This terrible script was set to be produced by Jon Peters, the hairdresser turned movie mogul. Peters is infamous for, among other things, forcing giant mechanical spiders into 1999's Wild Wild West. Peters' planned Sandman adaptation was also poised to feature a machine-like arachnid, as well as a nonsensical plot in which Morpheus, Lucifer, and the Corinthian were identical triplets.
It was the worst script that I've ever read by anybody.
Gaiman also admitted to leaking the script to the then influential movie geek website Ain't It Cool News. The site gave the script an equally savage review and ultimately killed its chances of going forward. On paper, James Cameron directing a Spider-Man movie sounds like it should have been a good idea. After all, Spider-Man is awesome, and James Cameron has helmed some of the biggest blockbusters of all time. So, shouldn't it be a match made in heaven? You'd think that, but judging by Cameron's unmade 1993 treatment for the film, it seems this would have been a case of the elements not working well together. The major issue with Cameron's treatment is that it's ridiculously dark. This version of Peter Parker, set to be played by Leonardo DiCaprio, wasn't your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, but instead a remorseless killer. Add in some weird casting choices like Kevin Spacey as the Green Goblin, as well as a still limited state of special effects in the early 90s, and it's probably best that we never got to see this film. Cameron also intended the climax to be atop the World Trade Center towers, an idea that would have been instantly dated following the September 11th attacks. So we can be thankful that legal issues ended this production, and Sam Raimi's 2002 movie ended up being Spider-Man's big screen debut instead. Here's an example of how dramatically the culture can change in just a few years. In the 2020s, the lustful French skunk Pepe Le Pew was effectively banned from appearing in new Looney Tunes cartoons because the character's only joke is based around sexual harassment. A scene trying to make fun of his problematic nature got cut from Space Jam: A New Legacy, and Pepe was last seen on screen being erased from existence in an episode of the Animaniacs reboot. This makes it all the more shocking to realize that Warner Brothers spent much of the previous decade trying to give Pepe Le Pew his own feature-length movie. In 2010, Mike Myers was announced to be voicing the skunk for a live-action CG hybrid movie. Warner Brothers was still working on this film as recently as 2016, when a screenplay was written by Max Landis. Considering that multiple women have accused Landis of sexual assault and abuse in the years since, this would have made for a particularly disturbing match. The Toy Story 3 that hit theaters in 2010 is rightfully celebrated as one of the greatest sequels ever made and among the best Pixar movies. However, its legacy as a powerful end-of-childhood tearjerker makes it easy to forget that in the days before Disney officially bought Pixar, news about Toy Story 3 sounded less like a promise and more like a threat. But this was all because Disney was trying to make Toy Story 3 without Pixar. Before his ousting in 2005, then Disney CEO Michael Eisner set up the Circle 7 animation studio to develop direct-to-video sequels for Pixar movies that had been previously produced under the Disney banner. A few plots were cycled through for another Toy Story sequel, including the toys solving a murder mystery and Buzz being recalled to a toy manufacturing plant in Taiwan. Fortunately, Eisner's departure from the company and Disney's subsequent acquisition of Pixar put a stop to this project, so Pixar ultimately got to develop its own Toy Story 3 for theaters. Spike Lee's 1992 epic Malcolm X is one of the rare biopics to rise above the genre's cliches and stand as a great film in its own right.
We didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us.
Interestingly, Lee's screenplay was a rewrite of a much older draft written by James Baldwin and Arnold Pearl in 1968. Had the script been produced back then, there's good reason to suspect the movie would have been a total disaster. Baldwin, a friend of Malcolm X's, was an inspired choice to be the screenwriter. The executives at Columbia Pictures, however, didn't support him, which prevented Baldwin from telling the story accurately. Baldwin wanted Billy D. Williams in the lead role, but the studio reportedly wanted Charlton Heston in blackface. There's not much else you can say about such a blatantly racist concept, aside from what Baldwin himself said in the Cambridge Companion to Malcolm X regarding his decision to quit the project. "I didn't want to be part of a second assassination." Rub and Tug was set to be a biopic about Dante Tex Gill, a trans-masculine gangster and massage parlor owner. In 2018, Scarlett Johansson was signed on to play Tex. This was a questionable decision, to say the least, as it came at a time when the trans community was being increasingly vocal about wanting trans actors to be cast in trans roles. Johansson withdrew from the role shortly after her casting was announced, though this didn't stop her from making a laughable defense of it. Speaking to As If Mag a year later, Johansson said, "As an actor, I should be allowed to play any person or any tree or any animal because that is my job and the requirements of my job." A better version of Rub and Tug might still eventually get produced. In 2020, Transparent writer Our Lady J was announced to be developing the story as a TV series, with the promise to cast a trans man to play Tex. However, no news about the show has been reported since. When thinking of classic movies that absolutely do not need sequels, Casablanca is pretty high on the list.
He's looking at you, kid.
But that hasn't kept people from trying. Brazzaville, which was announced in 1943, never got made. It was set to be in the French city that Rick Blaine and Captain Reno planned to visit at the end of Casablanca. Howard Koch, one of the original film screenwriters, later wrote a treatment for a sequel titled Return to Casablanca in 1980. That plot centered around Rick and Ilsa's illegitimate son searching for his dad. Cass Warner even attempted to get it produced in 2012, but it also ended up nowhere.
It's still a story without an ending. What about now?
No.
Live-action anime adaptations have a mixed track record at best when it comes to quality and a downright terrible one when it comes to actually being made. One such adaptation that's been stuck in development hell is the Warner Brothers remake of Akira. It's not as if the idea of remaking Akira is in and of itself sacrilege. After all, Katsuhiro Otomo's original manga is different enough from the anime that there's room for another adaptation. Doing a remake in live-action, however, seems a bit more questionable, given the special effects budget that will be needed to do the story justice. Furthermore, but doing an American remake just brings more problems, both in terms of adapting the manga's very Japanese cultural concerns and of the high risk of the characters being whitewashed. Filmmakers who tried and failed to get the Hollywood Akira made include Stephen Norrington, Rory Robinson, the Hughes brothers, and Joe Sarah. Most recently, Taika Waititi has been attached to the project. His refusal to whitewash the cast is a positive sign, but Akira still seems like an odd fit for a director most skilled at comedies. Plus, Waititi is booked for many other films, which puts Akira on the back burner. The Day the Clown Cried is the movie on this list that actually got closest to being released. In September of 2024, the Library of Congress made an unfinished cut of the film available to watch for research purposes. Given the mystique that's been built up around this legendary awful Jerry Lewis comedy, a lot of film and comedy geeks are sure to be interested in checking it out. But it's probably a good thing it wasn't made available before now. The Day the Clown Cried is about a circus clown in Nazi Germany who gets sent to a concentration camp. The concept is somewhat similar to the popular but controversial 1997 film Life is Beautiful, and some have even made comparisons between the two. However, Life is Beautiful doesn't end with the clown character leading Jewish children into the gas chambers and then joining them out of guilt. Yes, that really is the ending of The Day the Clown Cried. It's no surprise that Lewis didn't want this cinematic train wreck to see the light of day in his lifetime. After all, people who have watched the rough cut have been effusive about just how astonishingly terrible it is.